How far along the path to artificial intelligence do you think we are?
The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful, but I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race.
Artificial intelligence. You may have heard this term a lot these days, didn't you?
Bill Gates is warning of the risks of artificial intelligence.
So I think we should be cautious with AI.
If you just pause the good guys and you don't pause everyone else, you're probably hurting yourself.
It's like the space race of today, except it is not fought between just countries these days, but corporates, big corporates who have a lot of money in their pockets to invest in this new technology. They can create a new tech no one has ever seen.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Or can literally invest billions of dollars just to get ahead of others. General public has different opinions upon it. While there are many perspectives, it's mostly divided into people who don't want AI and people who want AI. But most are concerned, and they're not wrong. They have justified reasons. But artificial intelligence didn't just come out of the thin air in the 21st century to worry people. It came out as a term a long way back, in the year 1956, when AI was not like today but more like a field for scientists to pursue. Majority laughed at those who worked to make it possible as they gave up on the idea of AI. It's a whole story. It's a story of the conflicts of perspectives of two scientists who are equally important for the field of AI. It's a story of scientists who work day in and day out to prove the world wrong. It's a story of major downfalls and minor successes. Until breakouts occurred, things started to make sense. Companies started building around this AI thing and major funding started coming in. Basically, all in all, it's a story of how AI evolved among us. So the story begins on July 7th of 1958 when the US military and the National Weather Service were doing some tests with the perceptron, which was built by this man, Frank Rosenblatt. Now, who is this guy, you ask? Well, he was an American psychologist with a belief that machines could make the everyday life of humans faster and easier. It was tested in a way to see whether the perceptron could learn by doing tasks repeatedly, and the result, it could. In the 1950s, to know that a machine could learn a task by its own was massive, just beyond the imagination of humans. Hence, the news broke out. The New York Times declared the perceptron as a self-learning electronic computer, which is, quote, conscious of its existence. It was hyped too much in the media and started receiving several criticisms. But our Frank stood his ground and did not give up his belief upon the artificial intelligence and neural networks. Yes, neural networks. Now, these neural networks basically are a network of neurons which are pretty similar to that in the brain, except it is just artificial. There are even layers in the neural networks, such as the input layer, which takes an input. Multiple hidden layers can range from one in the 1950s to even millions and billions in today's world. And it basically does all the processing and understanding of the data, and also consists of the output layer which gives us the desired output. Now, returning back to the story, after building the perceptron, Frank and his students got busy into building another machine called the Tobermory, which was being designed to recognize speech. While building these remarkable machines, another guy was constantly criticizing Frank and his idea. His name was Marvin Minsky. They literally used to debate and argue in open conferences over neural networks. He even wrote a book called The Perceptron, after the perceptron Frank built, in which he openly mocked and dumped garbage over neural networks, and was very much a reason why most people, significantly scientists, gave up upon the idea of neural networks. That book, which Marvin wrote, had pretty significant consequences all over the world. It was published in 1969, and the slump in the fundings to the AI field started decreasing in 1973 and stayed like that for almost a decade. This slump came to be known as the AI winter. Frank unfortunately did not outlive this period as he died in 1971. The period between the 80s and the 90s was considered as a negative time for artificial intelligence, but small and certain developments kept AI alive. After Minsky's opinion resonated with most of the world, a new person started coming on the scene. He is now regarded as the godfather of AI, and his name is Geoffrey Hinton. Talking about his early life, he was like most people, not sure of what to study and having no specific passion. But as time passed, he realized that he wanted to study the human brain, and from here his journey in AI started. He soon joined a university, but the British government at the time decreased the funds to AI development as the AI winter was still going on. So as a result, he left England and went to California, where he met a group of people called the PDP, short for Parallel Distributed Processing, and which mainly consisted of not computer scientists but psychologists and neuroscientists. There he met David Rumelhart, who proved to be an important figure for Hinton. They researched and worked together for several weeks until they came up with a result. Remember the book Perceptron? One of the main criticisms from the authors was the absence of multi-layered neural networks in the perceptron. And they did exactly that. Thanks to an old concept of backpropagation, they built a system of neural networks which could do simple calculations like solving exclusive OR problems and do some simple recognitions. Many developments apart from this backpropagation took place in the 90s, like the Boltzmann machine, which could create its own sound and images and compare it to what was given by the user. Next comes the beginning of Tesla. No, not the company, but what is Tesla really known for? Self-driving cars or autonomous vehicles? Well, this concept came as early as 1987 when a guy named Dean Pomerleau developed Alvin, and the breakthrough came in 1991 when Alvin drove from Pittsburgh to Pennsylvania at nearly 97 kilometers per hour. In a research paper, the man himself wrote, Alvin is a 3-layer backpropagation network designed for the task of road following. It takes images from a camera and a laser range finder as the input and produces the direction the vehicle should travel as the output. As the breakthrough of self-driving cars came in 1991, that of image recognition system came in 1989. And who brought it? Jan LeCun, who developed Linet, which could recognize and analyze handwritten letters and numbers and display it on the screen. His belief upon the neural networks was solid, and his breakthrough was building a convolutional neural network. So the date is 24th of January 2014, and Larry Page, Alan Eustace and Geoffrey Hinton were on their way to London to negotiate and possibly strike a deal to acquire an AI startup, DeepMind. DeepMind was founded by Dennis Hassabis, Shane Legg and Mustafa Saliman in 2010 at London with an aim to build AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence, in an attempt to mimic the human brain. They were building intelligence in the labs which could beat humans in games like Atari, Space Invaders, Pong and Breakout. They also built a new technique through which neural networks could learn at a much faster rate than ever, which they called reinforcement learning. Now back to the story, the Googlers who traveled to London in order to visit the DeepMind headquarters were left impressed, and when they learned that the DeepMind researchers were working on something like the generative models, which could make the neural networks generate images by analyzing some patterns, they were convinced that DeepMind and Google would be a perfect collaboration. And on the same day, the news broke up. Google acquired DeepMind for a mammoth $650 million. It was a turning point in the recent history of artificial intelligence, and it started an AI race among the big players of Silicon Valley, raising the question that who will reach the summit first. Google started it, and it's going on just as we speak. Now what can we conclude from this story? Deep learning was in demand and still is. The big four of the Silicon Valley, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple are competing with each other for acquiring the best talent in this field. And around the same time, when Google acquired DeepMind, Facebook hired Jan LeCun as their chief AI scientist. It was somehow contradicting the Facebook's philosophy. Facebook is a social media company, and that too the largest one in the field. But its CEO had some other intentions. Mark Zuckerberg wanted to build an AI lab for Facebook. He didn't want to stay behind in the race. But at this time, Microsoft was far behind in this AI race. But slowly and gradually, it started coming on the track. When Microsoft's longtime researcher Larry Zitnik hired Ross Girshick and Meg Mitchell. But the progress in Microsoft was slower than its other tech counterparts in the Silicon Valley. Part of the reason was because of the presence of another operating software other than Windows, Linux. It was very flexible for building deep learning applications, and the best thing, it was open source. The AI community was literally using Linux for their AI development, whereas Microsoft researchers were stuck copying features of Linux into their Windows. So when others came, their talent began to leave. Both Zitnik and Ross joined Facebook, and Meg joined Google. As time passed, Google was leading the race thanks to its DeepMind collaboration. Their image and speech recognition became far better than what it was before. And now deep learning was making their search algorithm faster and better for their customers. More and more GPUs were being used by tech companies instead of CPUs in order to enhance the speed of their neural networks. But as Google was expanding all around the globe, the number of customers attached to Google was increasing day by day, which meant that they were seriously in need of an upgrade. GPUs from Nvidia and Intel were not sufficient enough. So Jeff Dean and Hosley worked in a semi-secret lab to build their own chip, and they came up with Tensor Processing Unit, TPU, which runs on Google's own TensorFlow software. This chip really helped Google achieve very high speed in sentence translation and search results. Developments like these kept on happening inside the labs of these big tech companies of which no one was aware of. Artificial intelligence surely made people excited about the future of this planet and some worried. But all in all, it turns out that making our lives easier with deep learning and AGI is just much more difficult and complicated than they imagined. Turns out that they kind of fell short. It was all hype, and when Elon found his company Tesla was going in the same direction he initially opposed, he left OpenAI in 2018. Somewhere else, effects of AI were being felt in the real world, both in a positive and in a negative way. For example, Amazon was installing some robotic hands in its warehouses to handle various of its products. Though it increased the efficiency of that process, at the same time, it took the jobs of the 3 people who were employed to do the same job in that warehouse. Though at the time, no one thought that artificial intelligence has become so much advanced that it would start taking the jobs of the humans in the real world, it could not be ignored as a possibility. More so, both OpenAI and DeepMind announced that they were working towards making AGI a real-world reality. DeepMind already belonged to Google, and in 2019, Microsoft announced that it was making an initial investment of $1 billion in OpenAI. And more recently, as you have already read the news, Microsoft bought OpenAI for a mammoth $10 billion, which is a big deal in itself. This race is intensifying between the largest players of the software industry in the Silicon Valley, Google and Microsoft, and this is just going to intensify more as Google prepares the launch of its Bard in response to Microsoft's ChatGPT, which shocked the world in 2021 when it was first launched. But if we turn our attention to the common people out there, people who will be directly affected by these advancements in artificial intelligence, they have some concerns of their own. Not all are excited due to the lack of trust, not upon the technology, but upon the companies who are making these technologies. According to a survey done by the Pew Research Center upon American citizens, it was found that only 18% are more excited than concerned, whereas the rest of the 82% are somewhat more concerned about AI entering our lives. Many factors are responsible for these type of observations, like the age group of people, privacy concerns, and some even believe that white people will be at a higher advantage than black people, and many more. According to some experts, defining ethics in AI is tough because most AI and its code is hidden and is very complex to understand. It is humans who write the code, and they can have some biases of their own. No one is perfect, and hence their code for everyone. When we talk about AI ethics, it comes down to mainly these 3 points: privacy and surveillance, bias and discrimination, and whether, the third and the most important point, whether AI can match up with a human judgment. Machines till now have not been able to think exactly like humans, It cannot have the same empathy or feelings like we have. So trust issues arise when AI is allowed to make decisions by its own in many industries. Artificial intelligence came up for the first time in our vocabulary in 1956 when the father of artificial intelligence, John McCarthy, gave a speech during a summer workshop. From then to until now, it has been a roller coaster ride for AI, having gone through some major ups and downs. Humans have been trying to make various jobs more efficient, cut unnecessary prices, and elevating the standards of himself, society, and the world with the help of AI. Though science fiction movies have popularized the idea of digital utopia, it remains to be seen whether those fantasies can ever come to reality, or we can ever use AI to create something more, something unseen, and something beyond.